So, you are a Zimbo, young and old, man or woman, and you're looking for which car to buy. What do you look at? Which one type of car makes sense to buy in Zimbabwe? And why? Well, sit back, relax, let me give you a cheat code on the good and the bad of every type of car. I'm talking about petrol, diesel, hybrid, electric, and the different sizes of cars. Also, this is the first episode in a series of buying second-hand cars in Zimbabwe, so if what you want to know is not in this particular episode, then you will definitely get it in one of the upcoming episodes in this series. So make sure you subscribe and follow our channel. Let's get the show on the road! Petrol-powered cars are the most popular because the engines are the simplest when it comes to engines that burn fuels. And you know what that means. Simple engines are cheap to maintain, which is the first advantage. There are just fewer moving parts and so fewer points of failure. Petrol is also one of the easiest fuels to burn, and this helps petrol engines to be able to produce a good amount of power. And power makes petrol-powered engines pretty fast too, so it's just fun to drive for all of those that love speed, like me. Also, as of late in Zimbabwe, petrol has been slightly cheaper than diesel, another short-term benefit of the petrol-powered side of things. But there are some disadvantages with petrol-powered engines. Since petrol is easier to burn, it's not an efficient fuel compared to diesel. So, a petrol VW Passat can do 10.6 kilometers with a liter of fuel, and the diesel version of the same car with the same engine can do 15 kilometers from the same liter of fuel. In this single example, the petrol-powered car goes 4.4 kilometers less on a liter of fuel than a diesel car. It's 29% more expensive than a diesel. Another problem is that vehicles that move a nation's economy run on diesel. So when a fuel shortage strikes and funds are in a bit of a pinch, a nation can prioritize diesel over petrol. So you will statistically suffer more from a fuel crisis in a petrol-powered car than in a diesel-powered car. Valentine and some nerds in the car industry call diesel-powered cars rolling coal for the obvious reasons. It produces a thick black smoke when it's working hard. But from the petrol section, we see it's got some pocket-friendly advantages. Since you need almost 30% less diesel to cover the same distance as a similar petrol-powered car, you save 30% on your fuel bill. That's an advantage of diesel. Diesel is also used in many commercial applications, so you are affected a bit less with fuel shortages compared to petrol-powered vehicles. Moreover, historically, diesel has been cheaper than petrol in Zimbabwe. It's only in the past year in Zimbabwe that diesel prices have been matching or exceeding petrol prices, which could just be a temporary thing. Time will tell. And whilst petrol engines are good at producing power for a higher top speed, diesels are good at producing torque, which makes them better at pulling or carrying heavy loads, something that petrol engines are not really good at. That is why buses, trucks, mining and construction vehicles use diesel engines, because they need a lot of torque to move earth, rubble, goods and people, which weigh a lot. It also has its cons. Diesel engines are a bit more complex than petrol engines in that to get them as efficient as they are, they make use of turbochargers and pretty powerful fuel injectors. These are components that force more air into the engine, as well as make a super fine spray of the fuel within the engine so that it can burn the diesel better and make more power with the same amount of fuel you would probably use in a petrol car. It is good tech, but this added complexity can be expensive on servicing. Diesel owners know that injectors are a pain point on diesel engines because they can fail and they can be quite expensive to replace. Diesel engines also need a higher grade of oil than petrol engines because of the fact that they can operate at higher temperatures and pressures than petrol engines. So servicing them is a little bit pricier than petrol engines, and this is stuff to think about, right? But whilst we stew over that, let's take a look at hybrids. A hybrid car is a car with two power units that drive it: a fuel-burning engine and an electric motor with its battery pack. We have a couple of different types here: normal hybrids that use some power from the engine to charge the batteries, and plug-in hybrids that use the mains to charge the battery that then powers the electric motor part of the hybrid unit. These plug-in hybrids are not very common in Zimbabwe, so I'll be looking at the former, the one that uses an engine as a generator to charge the battery. Depending on how you are driving, the car will be alternating between the internal combustion engine and the electric motor plus battery combination. This brings in a couple of advantages. Now, because the internal combustion engine is not running the whole time the car is being driven, it saves on fuel. So a Honda Fit hybrid will consume less fuel than its non-hybrid variant for the same engine size. How much less, you ask? The 2010 Honda Fit hybrid does 18.8 kilometers per liter of fuel, and the pure petrol version with no hybrid does 12.3 kilometers with the same liter of fuel. That's 35% better fuel economy, which means for this particular car, the hybrid can go a further 6.5 kilometers after the non-hybrid has run out of fuel. And the hits just keep on coming. Depending on the hybrid setup, some of them will run on the petrol engine and only use up the battery to give the car more power. This can be useful when you are, let's say, overtaking. And with some, you can run just the electric power alone when driving at low speeds, usually under 40 kilometers per hour for an average of about 20 km. Also, since the electric system of the car assists the internal combustion engine, it can help reduce the strain on this engine, extending the life of the engine's components. All these good bits do not mean it's all chocolate and roses though. Hybrid cars are essentially a car with two powertrains or two engines. This means it's a lot more complicated than a pure internal combustion engine or a pure electric car. And so servicing can be a bit more expensive because there is just more stuff to look at. A big problem in Zimbabwe with hybrids is that it's still a new technology, and so if the electrical system fails, there are very few places you can be able to get that fixed. And also, the batteries that come with hybrids have an expected life of 5 years or 160,000 kilometers for Honda Fits, for example. So if you buy a second-hand hybrid Honda Fit with 80,000 kilometers on the clock, then you're most likely getting 50% of what you should be getting in terms of that battery's performance. When the battery dies, it will not hold charge, so your engine will completely be strained by this dead battery trying to keep it fully charged. And for the price of $2,700 for a new Honda Fit hybrid battery, it's pretty much half of the price for another second-hand hybrid. Just a little point to note. The same pros and cons of petrol and diesel engine cars also apply to petrol or diesel hybrids, in case anyone was curious. Right, next up, electric. If you take a walk or a drive north of Samora, you'll see a couple of Nissan Leafs here and there, and a bunch of them will have VIA 100% electric stickers all over them. And in the CBD, you may have seen an EasyGo 100% electric taxi or shuttle. We actually have a small but also impressive number of electric vehicles in Zim if you pay attention. As the name suggests, they run purely on battery power, like a laptop. The second-hand Nissan Leafs can do around 150 kilometers on a single charge. As for the BYD electric vehicles being used by the likes of EasyGo, It's still tough to get them secondhand because they're still very new to the Zimbabwean market, but the brand new BYD T3 minivan has a range of 300 kilometers, and the BYD E6 station wagon has a rather astonishing range of 500 kilometers that they write on paper. The perks of having electric cars are the fact that the only moving parts are the electric motors, so maintenance costs are probably the lowest of any car. The only fluids you have to check are the brake fluid, the power steering fluid for those that use like a hydraulic steering rack and coolant. BYD actually said that the electric motor is checked after 8 years and the battery is after 15 for their BYD vehicles. So really the servicing costs for electric vehicles as well as the intervals are lower than the service intervals and costs for petrol, diesel or hybrid cars. It gets a whole lot more compelling with running costs as well, and if you are a Zimbo, you want to listen closely. The battery pack of an electric car is essentially a fuel tank equivalent to an internal combustion engine car, a car that uses petrol or diesel. So essentially 1 liter of fuel is pretty much equivalent to 1 kilowatt hour on an electric car. Right now, as I film this, 1 liter of petrol is around 249 Zim dollars at the official bank rate, whilst 1 kilowatt hour or 1 unit of electricity is $2.52, and that's Zim dollars. That's almost 10 times cheaper. I mean, look at it this way. Charging a BYD T3 from empty to full will require 50 units of electricity or 50 kilowatt hours, which will cost you 126 Zim dollars. So you can essentially fill up an electric car's battery for the same amount of money you would use to buy half a liter of petrol. It's seriously crazy how cheap it is to run an electric vehicle in Zimbabwe. It's no surprise why slowly more people are just going full on electric. And the bonus of electric cars is that the components that drive it are so compact that they free up a lot of cabin space. As a result, most electric cars are very roomy and have pretty good luggage space, making them more practical than the equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle. But even with these seemingly amazing benefits, electric cars also have some impediments. The glaring one is there are not that many public charging stations to charge these cars, and as far as I know, there are none in Zimbabwe. And this will not make them popular for those looking to do long distance road trips. Maybe for inner city driving they could work. So you will be charging them at home with the AC slow charger that comes with the car, which is made to work on a regular household socket. A full charge with this can take 6 to 12 hours depending on the size of the car's battery and how fast the charger is. A way around this is paying extra for a DC fast charger that can fully charge the car within about an hour. It's no secret that Zimbabwe's electricity supply is very unreliable, so it's possible to go for days with no power. For just commuting to work and back, you might need 50 kilometers of battery range, meaning with the Nissan Leaf you'll be able to do 3 days worth of work trips before you run dry. But Zim's power situation can leave you with no power for longer than that, easily, which then makes it a gamble when owning an electric car. And it's even worse if you have a solar system, because most of them do not have the capacity to charge an electric car. It is actually recommended that if you are completely off-grid and you want to charge an EV on solar, the system needs to be at the very least, a 5 kVA system, which on average costs $5,000 in Zimbabwe from the little research that we did, and that's a lot of money. And then servicing in Zimbabwe is also tricky, as this is still new technology for Zimbabwe. So if there is no service center in Zimbabwe for the electric vehicle brand you buy, then you could find it hard to live with that car. It might be wise to consult local service centers before buying a specific EV. And finally, the range of an EV is severely affected by weather. The capacity of a battery to hold charge falls the colder it gets. It's a battery thing and it applies to all batteries. So in winter, your EV will not be taking you as far as it would in summer. Now, of course, there are systems in EVs to heat up the batteries so that this problem is somewhat avoided, but the energy you then use to heat these batteries is energy being drawn from these same batteries that drive the car. So you still use some driving range from that. It's only fair to mention that Zimbabwean winters are not as cold as in Europe and some parts of Asia and North America. So the reduction of range in winter might not be as bad here in Zim as it would be in those areas where they have snow and stuff. And that is pretty much it for powertrains. My advice on powertrains is that fuel is a better cost to take up than parts. So you may want to actually get a slightly less fuel efficient car like a pure petrol or a pure diesel car instead of a hybrid, simply because there are less bits that can fail, and if repairs are involved, they will be a bit cheaper. If you feel like buying a hybrid and fuel savings are paramount importance, then make sure you buy a brand new one or very close to new with really low mileage so that you can actually utilize the hybrid features in their most efficient form. And as for EVs, they are an excellent choice, but only if they are a second car and they are paired with a car that runs on petrol or diesel. I mean, with $10 you can practically fully charge an EV of your choice with probably a bit of change to spare. So as a city runner, it's hands down the most economical choice. But with the erratic power supply in Zimbabwe and literally no public EV charging stations available in our land, it's quite risky making an EV your one and only car. What about size? The general rule on vehicles is the smaller it is, the more fuel efficient it ends up being, except for sports cars, and the less utility these small cars offer. Plus also they're a bit more flimsy when they're small, so they will need to be serviced and maintained frequently. Then the bigger a car is, the less fuel efficient it will be, and the more utility it will offer as well in terms of space and ruggedness. So the bigger cars have less frequent maintenance and servicing demands in general. Your preference will essentially be the deciding factor of which type of car you go for. But hopefully this video helps shed some light on the benefits and drawbacks of most, if not all, of the types of vehicles you can encounter when you are shopping for a car. And don't be scared to visit dealerships selling brand new cars. Some of them have really good prices on brand new vehicles that might not be as expensive as you think. Stay subscribed to TechZim so that you don't miss the episode on buying a brand new car in Zimbabwe. Thank you for watching. Catch you in episode 2.